available, and there's your reminder of that. It will be available on both Rodney's website as well as David's website later this week. Second, we are going to make this interactive. So throughout the presentation tonight, we'll be asking some polling questions. So if you could take a couple seconds when those pop up to read those questions and answer them, we'd greatly appreciate it. And third is that in your taskbar at the bottom of your screen, in your Zoom bar, you should see a Q&A section. That is for questions. So throughout the presentation, if you think of any questions that you would like to ask, please put that into that chat bar and we will answer those at the end when we have the time allotted for questions. So with that being said, let me introduce you to your speakers for this evening. So Rodney H. Piercey, he is an esteemed estate and tax planning attorney, and David Kottler, who's a national speaker and life insurance expert. David and Rodney have been working together over the past 7 years, helping their clients in the fields of tax planning, estate planning, and life insurance planning, and showing them how all three of those areas should be integrated so that they can achieve the best results. Think of it as a stool, that all three legs of that stool, you need to have balance. You need to have all three areas of those planning concepts to have maximum balance and flexibility in your plan. So with that, Rodney, if you would like to share with what you're going to be speaking about tonight.
Thanks, Michelle. Before I jump into the two major areas that we're going to touch on, I want to thank you all for joining us to this special client event. We're grateful for new technology that so conveniently allows us to share new protections, legal updates. As a firm, you probably know, we're always looking for new ways to protect our clients and new national experts to work with as resources. Because we're specialists just in one area, and we do work with many in other areas. So I'm going to touch on how the current and proposed tax changes can impact your retirement dollars. I'm also going to be talking about how to preserve and protect your estate from shrinkage with some fairly new strategies. So my offering to you tonight is a free review of your plan. If you have a trust, I would review the trust if it was done by another firm. If it was done by us, I've already reviewed it. If you don't have a trust, I would be happy to sit down with you and report what life is like without a trust. And so this would be a free meeting. We normally charge existing clients for that meeting, but we're making an exception because of the law changes. Again, this would not apply to you as far as protections that are added in the last 3 years, but some of the law changes do apply to you, having some of them being very, very current. So my mission is to help our clients.
David's going to share about what he's going to speak about as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney. So the points that I want to cover this evening will be how to transfer your business successfully and avoid many of the common pitfalls that prevent that from happening. Also, a topic which most people find very interesting is how to find hidden value. Everybody likes to find a pleasant surprise. I'm going to try to help you find hidden value in your life insurance policy. Also, a startling statistic, 90% of life insurance policies do not last long enough to pay a death benefit. And we're going to address what you can do to prevent that. And another factor is many people take loans on their policies, and if they're not handled properly, can result in very adverse tax consequences. We're going to show you how to turn that into a liquidity opportunity and avoid the negative tax consequence. The offer that I'm making is a performance policy review of your life insurance policy, as well as a free copy. You can download it digitally off my website, which is listed on the bottom there. Look forward to speaking with you later.
Thank you both, Rodney and David. So I think this would be a good opportunity to use our first poll. So that question should be popping up on your screen here. And the question is, what are you most excited to learn about tonight? So if out of those 4 topics that Rodney and David discussed, if you could take a couple seconds and answer those, we'd greatly appreciate it. And when I see most of the people have voted, I will end the poll. So I'll give you a couple minutes there. Appreciate everyone voting. All right, I'm going to end the poll. It looks like almost everyone has voted, and we've got a good balance between all of the features. So thank you for that. So Rodney, let's take it back to you, and you can kick it off there.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I jump into my mission, I just want a brief background for those of you who don't know me. I started out as a real estate lawyer almost half century ago, but I soon learned that in real estate law, you're sitting at a table fighting over nickels, and either they win or you win, and it's stressful and not a real huge impact. So I learned that I can make a much, much bigger impact by helping people protect all of what they've saved or inherited. And this is some of the most important things that you'll ever talk about. And I've done nothing else for the last 26 years. So this is an area that we're very passionate about. My mission, in the simplest terms, is to help our clients navigate around icebergs. What icebergs? Well, lawsuits that are lurking, probate court cases that can take up to 15,000 all the way up to 25% in fees and costs, let alone the risk of losing everything to a lawsuit in probate. Almost half in estate taxes. If you hit a certain threshold amount, the state and federal estate taxes are almost half. Capital gains taxes right now are approaching 30% in Illinois, and there's discussion about almost doubling that. So these are the icebergs in the water ahead that we're going to help people navigate around. So let me jump into recent changes in tax laws regarding retirement dollars. We find that because the incentives are so great to take money out when you're working, get a deduction, get a free tax-free match from your employer sometimes, a lot of our clients have very significant IRAs. And so one of the big changes is that IRAs are no longer lawsuit proof for your children when they inherit them. And surprisingly, we do IRAs for retirement, but most of the time they don't get spent in retirement, they get inherited. So for the Supreme Court of the United States to hand down a ruling that said, yes, they're lawsuit proof for you, but not for your children is huge. Now, there is a way that you can make them lawsuit proof for your children, but it involves making sure that you have a protected IRA trust. And that is a special kind of a trust that has all the IRS approved language in it. So it's not going to get all taxed at once on the date of second death, but it can be stretched out. So this is something that you just don't get when you get a living trust, unless it's specifically been drafted in for that. For our clients, if you worked with me before October of 2018, you do not have an IRA protected trust. If you did after that, you do. And if you didn't do it then, and you want the advantage of lawsuit protection for your children when they get the inheritance, you need to sit down with me and talk about the IRA protected trust. By the way, I'm going to be hitting at a very high level very quickly on these changes to the tax laws. You want more detail, it's going to have to be a meeting, and we're going to try to make that meeting as much fun as possible for you. So the other major change, which was only about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, was under the Secure Act, the children can no longer stretch their IRA for their entire lifetime. They're limited to 10 years. Now, when you consider paying a tax 40 or 50 years from now versus paying a tax within a 10-year period, it makes a huge difference in the value to the children of the stretch. So, but we do have a way that you can, your children can actually stretch it for their entire lifetime. And it's through an IRA CRT. And I mean, we love these acronyms, but I'm not going to tell you more about it now. But if you'd like to know how your children could stretch their IRA, your IRA that they're inheriting for 90 till they're 90 or 100, we can do that for them. It's not going to happen automatically. Other changes to tax laws regarding IRAs is that you cannot name your living trust as a beneficiary of your IRA unless it is updated and qualifies now under the new IRS language as a IRA protected trust. So if we did your trust before 2018, you cannot name it as a trustee of your trust. I'm sorry, as a beneficiary of your IRA without an update. So without that update, you're forced to name your children as beneficiaries. And that's kind of what everybody thought you had to do anyway, and it seems simpler. But remember, if you name a child of an IRA, no lawsuit protection. If they die and it goes to their children or any young person, that young person becomes an adult at 18 and they could pull all of the IRA out, pay the tax on it, and buy a Corvette. So you cannot get protection from those things unless you can run it through an IRA protected trust. Also, if a person is disabled and they get an IRA and they're on state money, the IRA can go to the state. So those are really huge changes to the laws and to the custodians. I'm going to jump now to the last topic the last major topic I'm going to talk about, and that is, what about new protections that are available now that maybe weren't available when you did your trust or were not available to the firm that did your trust? I've got 6 of them listed on this page. These are 6 of 20. There are 20 protections that we now offer. What happened was I bought a really good form in 1996 and I started using it. And I was very happy with it. It looked really great. Then I saw things happening to beneficiaries, which could have been avoided with good drafting. So we basically went to work, and over the last 25 years have added these. I guess I had 5 protections with the form I bought. Now I've got 20. So better divorce protection for your children. I think I might have touched on that. Better protection for disabled child. So the money inheritance, I'm not talking about IRA money now, I'm talking about everything. And that's, as a matter of fact, all these are about the entire inheritance, not just the IRA, except the one that mentions IRAs. Protect your home from lawsuits, both while you're alive and when you pass away. Now available under some new laws. IRA protection for lawsuits for kids. A really strong anti-greed clause. We have something called a no contest clause that says if somebody wants to fight and try to get a bigger share than you think they should get, and they file a lawsuit, not only do they lose any share they would have gotten, but they get to pay both sets of lawyers to fight about it. So there's a disincentive for them to do that. And also, we've added protections where a child cannot lose their inheritance in a lawsuit that comes against them before they get it. So those are just 6 of the major protections. Some of those you will have if we did your trust. Very few of those you will have if we did not do your trust. And I believe, Michelle, you have another polling question.
I do. Thank you, Rodney, for explaining all of those updates and the additional protection they can get. So let's do our second polling question. So that's going to pop up on the screen. And it's a two-part question. So the first is, do you have a trust? So you can answer yes or no to that. And then the second is, if you answered yes, when was the last time it was reviewed? Appreciate everyone's prompt responses. All right, so most of the results are in. That's great. Thank you. Most of you do have a trust, but it looks like a lot of them need to be reviewed. So Rodney, let's take it back over to you and talk about the proposed estate tax law changes.
And I did see a client question, so we will address those at the end. Great. Okay, so proposed estate tax law changes. As you may have heard, there have been some very serious discussions in Washington about overhauling all the laws, tax laws, capital gains, income tax, estate tax, with significant possible impact. I'm not going to go over each one of these tonight because they've not yet been passed. And there's significant question whether or not they will be. I will say that when they do pass new laws, if we have your email address, we will contact you to tell you about them if we think they might affect you. Now, of course, if we don't know your net worth, because you maybe did a real estate transaction with us, then I might have to send a blanket email just to warn you about it. So I've been blessed over the last 25 years to redirect more than 300 million away from taxes to family and charity. It's a very important part of our practice. There are about 70 tax strategies we use. Again, 4 of those are on the hit list. We don't know whether we're going to still have them. We're not actually doing any new cases right now because we don't want to be caught in the middle. So that's all I'm really going to say about a state tax and capital gains tax law changes. Stay tuned is what my bottom line is on that.
So let's read the audience with the polling question on that, Rodney. So polling question number 3, popping up here, is if the proposed tax laws change that were listed on the screen there, are you worried that they will affect your estate? So if you could answer if you're very worried, slightly worried, or they would not affect you. You guys are quick with your answers. We really appreciate that. It really helps us gauge the crowd and get some good information for future conversations. Okay, so let's close poll number 3. And it looks like the consensus is most are pretty worried about it if they get passed.
Okay, great. So to wrap up my part of this webinar, quote from Alan Lakin: "Planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it." I've often said, what's the death rate? And I did that at an old folks home, and a little old lady in the front row said, "Well, I don't know, for an 86-year-old. And I said, no, it's 100% for everybody. So we're talking about planning for the future so you can do something about it. And so I'm going to introduce David Kottler to you. I've known David for at least 7 or 8 years. I've worked with him on many, many cases. I met him at a conference in 2013, and I realized pretty quickly that he's a real expert in life insurance. And when you think of life insurance, you think of a life insurance salesman. David is not a life insurance salesman. David is what I call the life insurance doctor. And what he does is he can take his great experience and knowledge and dig deep into the 4 or 5 moving parts of a life insurance policy, and he can tell my clients whether it's a good policy, it's a not so good, it's really in trouble and going to crash and burn in 3 years, and you're going to owe $1 million in taxes. And he has helped me to fix or replace some very, very fatally ill policies. So life insurance and estate planning go hand in hand because of the obvious advantage of life insurance. Taxable dollars becoming tax-free dollars with a life insurance trust, small dollars becoming huge dollars, and of course, liquidity. So I'm really glad to introduce you to David to help you look at life insurance maybe in a little different way. David, please take it.
Rodney, thanks very much. My pleasure to be here.
Hi.
And appreciate everybody being here.
Daddy?
I'm sorry. Yes. So as you can see on the screen, despite all the great planning you can do, if you don't have life insurance in place when you need it, it could be for nothing. I'd like to share my personal story, which will help you understand how this event crystallized my mission and really my career. I grew up always wanted to be an attorney. And so when I was ready to go to law school, I realized that I'd have to work in the family business during the day to be able to afford to go to law school at night. Fortunately, over the time that I went to school, the business grew pretty dramatically. And to my pleasant surprise, I found that I really enjoyed the business. It was the food distribution business. Ice cream was a big part of it, which was a fun thing. And the business grew for many, many years. My dad passed away some 20 years later. We had done some extremely good tax planning as well as some estate planning. But what we really never purchased was life insurance. We never really, I guess, connected with the right person or understood how important the liquidity was. And so at the time that my father passed away, we didn't have the liquidity to pay off my siblings, pay the taxes, pay other various things that had to happen. And so a very valuable business, was basically transferred to other owners because we did not have the liquidity. And that event really, drove me and my mission to try to help other people avoid the significant loss that I experienced by not having insurance in place. And having been in the insurance business for 25 years plus, I've learned a lot about it and learned a lot of the problems that are there to help people retain their policies until that death benefit gets paid. It's a pretty amazing statistic that 90% of life insurance policies run out of cash or they lapse before paying that death benefit. And there really is one very critical component that can help avoid that, which is to get an accurate policy performance review. That's what I offered at the outset of the webinar, and something that I'm happy to provide as long as I have your help in getting me the information I need to analyze those policies. Another amazing statistic is 10 million policies owned by seniors, people 70, 75 and older, lapse each year with little or no benefit paid. And there is a multi-billion-dollar business out there with many institutional investors, Warren Buffett, people like that, interested in buying senior policies. Even though those people that have them may not want them, there's a big demand for those policies. And I'll share with you how you can tap into that. I grew up, and I'm sure most of you did, being warned, don't let your food go to waste. Don't let anything go to waste. And when you look at the tremendous waste of money as these policies run out with no benefits paid, it's money that could go to your family. It's money that could go to charity. It's money that could help, pay whatever increased costs you have. People are living longer, healthcare costs. So let's drive down the waste and let's maximize the benefits of the policies. So this is my mission, and this is what I really love doing.
David, thank you for sharing that. Let's take a quick poll. So if our poll question number 4, and so we're switching topics here. So do you currently own life insurance? You could answer yes or no. And then the follow-up question of that is, would you like to know if your policy is performing to your expectations? You guys are quick with your polling. So I think most of the answers are in there. Thank you. Thank you everyone who participated. Okay. Okay.
Do you have the bullet points, Michelle?
Yeah.
So this is the item which I was talking about, and there was an article written recently by Forbes magazine, and it gives a lot of details, as you'll see on the screen. The bottom line is, and it's a term of art in the insurance industry, an in-force illustration is something that I can help you make sure you get the right information for me to analyze. The 5 or 6 page report that you get at the end of each year from your insurance carrier would be like going to a doctor and saying, I want a full health checkup, but all you can do is check my blood pressure. It really is not sufficient data to check the performance of your policy. And I'll help you through that. I think the next slide shows what the deliverable is. I apologize in advance, don't let anybody's eyesight get too tired, but I wanted to give you a sense of the amount of data that is in this report. It's a very complete report based on what we get with simple recommendations, things that we can discuss. Next. The outcomes of a policy performance review will generally be one of 3 things. Your policy's in great shape. That's good news. I'll share one recent story. I did a review for a client. He was paying $20,000 a year in annual premiums. He had $1.5 million policy. He has a special needs daughter. The insurance was for that special needs trust. So it's very important to him that that policy be in good position. And not only was the policy okay, but I saved him $15,000 a year. The policies we determined would last through his age 100, and he could reduce the premiums by $15,000. So that was a good result. If the policy is not in great shape and needs work, we'll be very specific as to what the defects or the deficiencies are and how you can fix them. And if you're healthy, you know, how a new policy may be the right answer, but that's something we can discuss as we get into it. The third is that, and this would primarily be for people that are 70 or 75 and older, or perhaps have had a change in health, is that you don't need a life insurance policy. I believe the majority of people in the country are not familiar with what a life settlement is, but it's what I was discussing earlier, that there's a multi-billion-dollar market, very legitimate market. Most of the states in the country are regulated, protecting consumers to the nth degree. And it gives people that have a policy, as long as they fall within that window of the right age and the right health parameters, where they can get cash, or even get cash and retain a portion of their death benefits through what we call a life settlement. I just want to make one important note. Now, some of you may be familiar. There is a lot of TV advertising that goes on. Coventry First is one of the companies. I'm not picking on them, but they're probably the largest advertiser. And it's, you know, you've heard of buyer beware. Well, this is a case of seller beware. people like Coventry are interested in purchasing those policies at the lowest possible price because they're buying them for their own purposes. We operate as brokers and we work on a success fee. So it stands to reason we are on the same side as the policy owner. We want to maximize, get the highest possible value for those policies, which we do through a unique auction process where we try to get as many people bidding on it as possible. There's one other issue with policies I mentioned earlier, I'll just briefly touch on, is that if you have a whole life policy, many times people take loans so they don't have to pay premiums, or they take loans because they need the money. We have a unique new program to address those issues called a lending program. So it's not a life settlement, but it's sort of another way that we can help people that have policies in trouble.
David, thank you for explaining those 3 potential outcomes. Let's do our last polling question of the day. So that should be popping up here. And the question is, were you aware that your policy could provide immediate cash for you? Simple yes, no, or you've heard of it, but you weren't sure how it worked. Okay, we got most of the answers in there. I'd appreciate that. Pretty much across the board, equal parts there. So thank you, everyone. That was the last polling question. We're not done quite yet, but I will take the slide here to the next. There you go, David.
Well, so what we saw the screen earlier talking about where the estate tax laws may be requiring people to purchase new insurance because the allowable transfers are potentially going way down. There may be another reason why people would be interested, because with all the increased taxes that we're seeing a huge demand from consumers that are interested in creating supplemental retirement income for themselves. Life insurance is a unique product in that all the cash inside a life insurance policy grows tax-free. And when you are purchasing a retirement type of product, what you're trying to do is get as much cash inside that policy so that you can take money out of it at retirement age. And the beauty is you take that money out tax-free. And that's why people are so interested. To add a little icing on the cake, premium finance is an idea that can save those that qualify an additional 40% in their costs. Now, not everybody's going to qualify. You have to have a $5 million net worth, probably a $250,000 of annual income. But if you do qualify, that opportunity is there where instead of paying for the premiums out of your pocket, you borrow the money from a third-party lender, major bank, at very favorable rates. And this can be a very, very effective strategy. Are you charitably inclined? I know Rodney discussed earlier how he had transferred $300 million of tentative taxes back to families and to charity. And I have a charitable idea if you don't need your policy. The one thing that charities are not keen on or equipped to is to handle the management of a life insurance policy. There's just too many moving pieces. And if you wanted to make a gift of your policy to a charity, the other problem is you'd have to get an appraisal by a CPA, which would cost $5,000 or $10,000 to get that appraisal. Wouldn't it be a better idea if your policy was saleable, as we discussed earlier, selling your policy and gifting cash to the charity? Not only do you save the appraisal fee, but you'll find your charities will be very, very happy to receive cash. I'd now like to turn the webinar back to Rodney, and he can discuss some other great ideas in the charitable arena to help mitigate some of the changes that are coming down the pike.
Sure. Thanks, David. So many of you have not heard about a charitable remainder trust. I mentioned one a little while ago for IRAs to stretch it out over a child's lifetime. The purpose of that was basically to stretch out ordinary income tax. There's another possible use for a charitable remainder trust that many of my clients are taking advantage of. And that's if they have a highly appreciated asset, a farm, Apple stock that they paid a little for that's now worth 1,000 times that, any kind of highly appreciated asset. And if they sell it, they're going to end up with a 28.38 capital gains, or I'm sorry, 28.45 capital gains tax, meaning they only have about 71.5% of that left to provide income for them for their lives. So a charitable remainder trust is a way to completely eliminate the capital gains tax. And what you do is you basically put your asset into a bucket. The bad news is you can't get it back and go buy a villa in Nice. So it's trading an asset for an income stream that you could never outlive. But you will get a charitable deduction now, and you will also get the ability to have an income stream for your lifetime. It can't be less than 5% of the value. It could be as much as 10 or 15% of the value of the asset. So this is a way to reduce estate tax because it's no longer in your taxable estate. If you ever give money to charity, this is a way to really give large amounts to charity when you die. That's what the word charitable remainder means. They get the remainder when you die. So it's a very powerful tool that can actually generate more income for your lifetime, more for your children, and a huge amount to charity. So you say, wait a minute, I don't like the idea of $1 million going to a charity when I die. Well, I can engineer it so you eat up 90% of that in income for your life. It's really only 100,000, which ironically is 10%, but you still don't like the idea. Well, then we can buy life insurance to replace that with some of the tax savings. So another way to say that is, I'm going to let Uncle Sam pay for my children's inheritance with tax savings. Some clients get very excited about that. So thank you for David for letting me share about charitable remainder trusts for capital gains tax avoidance.
Thank you, both of you. A lot of great information this evening. So some of you might be wondering, how do we claim our free offers? Now, Rodney is offering a free review of the trust and your legal documents. David's offering a policy performance review. So as Rodney stated earlier, they kind of talked in very general terms. They would need to have an individual conversation with you to be able to talk about your particular situation. So I'm going to put in the chat feature links directly to Rodney's calendar and David's calendar, where you can schedule that initial phone call, and then you can ask specifically about your questions, and then see how to get your free review. So you go ahead and click those into the chat feature there, and the links, those should be able to take you directly to the calendars. So questions. Several questions have come up throughout, so I'm going to read these and direct them to who they are going to be able to answer best. So Rodney, first one is for you. If someone recently did their living trust with you, are they completely protected? Is Rodney frozen? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, I think Rodney's technology went frozen. So, so let's go to a different question here. So David, this one is for you. I have long-term care insurance with death benefit. Is that the same thing as having life insurance?
Well, the death benefit aspect of it is that would constitute being life insurance. And today, many life insurance policies have a long-term care component to it. So The answer, the simple answer is yes. I'd still be happy to review it to make sure that it's going to last for you and will be able to pay the benefits that you're hoping it will.
Another question is, can you comment on employer-provided life insurance rather than pursuing independently owned policy?
Well, I think the risk is what happens if you stop being employed there. The second risk is it the right type of product? Actually, I remember speaking with one of Rodney's clients. They had some insurance that they had through their employer, and it was way different from what they thought it was. Many times, the employer may not be offering a permanent type of policy. And as we spoke before, since 90% of policies aren't there, the purpose of the policy is for liquidity when there's a death. So I wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Maybe some of them are convertible to other policies, but again, it's not something that I would just accept in lieu of anything else without checking it out very carefully.
So 2 questions that I'll be able to answer was if the slides will be available or if this Zoom meeting will be available. And the answer to that is yes, it is being recorded. And we are going to take this recording and upload it directly to both David's website and Rodney's website. So you'll be able to pull it off of there, listen to it again and see all the content. Waiting for Rodney to come back on here. So David, all the questions are going to come your way that are regarding to the life insurance.
No problem.
Can you discuss life insurance with long-term care health care components?
Well, so again, recently, because people are realizing how important long-term care life insurance is, there are many policies that are being offered today where people can take a certain percentage of their death benefit in advance if they have a long-term care event. You know, frankly, there is such a multitude of options and policies. Every carrier offers a little bit different one. Again, my best suggestion is I'll be happy to take a look at what you have and give you a objective opinion of it.
So I did see that a comment that the link wasn't working for David there. So I just tested that and resent it. So that link should be working. Okay, so let me go to my other one here. So someone asked, do you have any opinions about LIRPs, life insurance retirement plans?
Well, I think you may be talking about like the supplemental employee retirement plan. That was the type of design that I was discussing earlier, where you're trying to accumulate cash inside the policy, which a portion of that cash can be distributed out against basis or as a loan to the policy owner. I think that's a great technique. But again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and you have to be very, very careful that you don't get upside down on that. By upside down, I mean take out so much of the cash that the policy is in jeopardy of lapsing. Some carriers have built-in protections against that, but not all. And if someone ever has a loan on a policy and that policy lapses, they're probably going to get an unpleasant surprise from the government, because the carrier is supposed to send the IRS a notification that a loan has been forgiven. And as Rodney will tell you, in tax law, when there is loan forgiveness, it's treated as ordinary income. As long as you dodge that pitfall, I think that it's a very good strategy. Yes.
And Rodney is back. I see his smiling face there. So it's like you overcame that technology.
I apologize. I lost my internet, so I had to go into my cell phone on my computer and reconnect. So I might be a little spotty, but back to the question. If someone did a trust with me in 2020, they do not need a meeting to update their trust. However, if they have a large IRA and they are interested in getting the lifetime stretch for their children, it might warrant a meeting to consider a CRT. So that would be the exception to not needing to meet with me if it's a newer plan.
So here's a kind of a follow-up to that. So someone asked about, what's the average cost of reviewing a plan that was done in 1996 and what protections would there be?
Well, if they weren't coming from this meeting, it would cost $450 just to meet with us. And that includes the review of everything, but because they participated in this, we're waiving that fee. But then so the meeting would be free, the review of their whole file would be free. As far as if they need some new protections, they would know the exact dollar cost before they left the meeting to the penny.
And what type of information would they need to gather to be ready for that meeting?
Well, they would basically get a confidential client information form emailed to them. They would fill it out in very estimated fashion about how much their house is worth, how much their IRA is worth, and they would bring that with them to the meeting. So I would say probably 15 minutes of their time. And I would have, if they did it with me, I would have all their documents. If they did it with someone else, then week before that meeting.
Okay. Another question, Rodney. Does a married couple need a joint trust or individual trust?
That's a great question. The answer is it's a tax-driven question, an estate tax-driven question, except in cases like pilots and doctors where there's liability questions. But generally speaking, if they do not have an Illinois estate tax as a couple, meaning less than 4 million, they can do a joint trust. If they have more than 4 million, they need two trusts to double the 4 million to 8 million. Now, if you have a doctor or a pilot, then they might want two trusts so that the hard assets, homes, stocks, bonds, mutual funds can be in the wife's trust, and the life insurance and the practice can be in the husband's trust, making them bulletproof from anybody claiming a suit against the doctor.
So another question talking about the CRT. Does the current law still provide for a present day tax deduction on the gift to the CRT?
Absolutely, yes. And I have heard nothing to suggest they're going to take that away. So yeah, and it could be as much as 60 or 70% deduction of what you put in, down to as low of maybe 25 or 30%, depending on how much income you take out during life. The more income you take out, the less the charity is going to get when you die, so the less of a deduction you get. And by the way, you can take that deduction this year and an additional 5 years if you can't use it all this year. So it's very powerful charitable tax deduction.
Thank you. I think that is all of, oh, one just came in. Do you help with estate tax portability?
Yes, very, very powerful right now, because right now each person has 11.7 million they can pass without a federal tax. And it might go to 3 million, 3.5. So if someone has died in the last 4 years, we would have them file an estate tax return, even though no estate tax was due, so that 11.7 from the person who died now can be portable over to the wife or husband. And even if they lower it to a 3.5, they've still got that 11.7 from the spouse. Great question.
So a couple questions just on the logistics of it. Can those 15-minute after that first 15-minute session, can that be a call? Can that be a Zoom meeting?
It can be either one, whatever the client prefers. And the purpose of the 15-minute call would be to qualify the need for a full review.
Okay, and then for that, if they do qualify for that full review, would that meeting be online or in person?
either way. I noticed the client and I think he is far away. So yes, definitely can be. All of our meetings now, every single one of them can be in person, Zoom, or telephone. Except signing conferences have to be Zoom. Got to be able to see it for our witnesses and notaries.
And David, same question to you.
Same answer, either Zoom or a phone call. I am located in Boca Raton. If anybody feels like coming down here, it's still probably going to be better to do it via phone or via Zoom.
It's a little hot this time of year, but and then how long does a typical insurance review take?
Well, from the point in time that I get the data that I need, which I will explain when we have our call, it could take you up to 2 weeks to get the information from the insurance carrier. Once you get me that information, it would take me, depending on how complicated it was, as little as either less than a week, certainly less than 2 weeks. So I would say at the outset, a month, as short as 2 weeks if you got the information from the carrier sooner. It won't take forever. It'll be current.
Okay, another question came in. This one's for Rodney. What should I do if I do not have a trust? Where can I get those types of questions answered?
Well, that would be the 1 hour meeting with me. I would basically explore life with a trust, life and death with a trust, life and death without a trust. Very informative meeting. It's like it's all, I do that in seminars that take an hour. And so basically it's your own private little educational session. And at the end of that meeting, you'll know whether you need 2 trusts, 1 trust, no trust, an irrevocable trust, or all kinds of things. So it's very, very informative. And what I do is I translate the very complex into understandable concepts in that meeting.
That's what a good attorney does.
Yes, I'm sure everyone appreciates that. Nobody speaking normal versus legalese. I think that is exhausted the questions. I hope that I'm pretty sure I got all of them. So if anyone has any final questions, put them in the chat. But if
I have
not,
one final comment, and that is, if you want to do a charitable remainder trust and avoid the capital gain, you've got to talk to me before you sell. If you've already sold, you have until the end of this year, if you sold this year, to do another strategy where we can get you a 95% deduction for whatever you put into it. So for example, I had a client who sold his trucking business and got a check for $7 million. And then he called me and I said, too late to do a charitable remainder trust, but I can get you a deduction for 95 to 98% of that right now, so that you don't have to send as much to the government for taxes next year. So we're always looking for good tax strategies. And that would be something that would, again, could be, if you sold an asset and already got money in an account to pay the tax next April, give me a call.
oh, one last question. Can the charitable remainder trust work for non-US based charities or US based charities such as a church that doesn't have a 501c3?
No.
It was a long question for a short answer.
There may be a way around that, though, if you can set up a sub account at a charity called a donor advised fund, and if they will allow you to do an overseas gift from that. Some donor advised funds will, some won't. But as far as directly from the CRT to the foreign charity, no, it's got to run through a donor advised fund, which adds 1,000 or 2. It adds maybe 0.5% to the cost of it. That's the negative of it.
Some
Michelle, thanks
fantastic
very much
questions.
for all your help. Did a great job. Rodney, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody that joined us. We certainly enjoyed it. And we hope you got a lot and will continue to get a lot of value out of the information that's been provided.
And we will send out an email once the recording's available on the websites. We
Great.
look forward to meeting with all of you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, David. And thanks, wonderful clients.
Good evening, everyone.